Hello everyone, today we'll be looking at the life of an individual who lived through 3 French revolutions. This individual was Marie-Therese Charlotte. She was the eldest surviving child of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI of France, and as the firstborn child of the King and Queen, was given the title of Madame Royale. She was born on the 19th of December of 1778. Her birth was long awaited as the country was waiting for Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI to give birth to their first child, as they had not consummated their marriage for 7 years upon marrying in May of 1770. Although some disappointment was met upon her birth, as the country had anticipated the birth of a male heir, this was because French succession rules at the time did not allow females to inherit the French throne, nor did they ever. Versailles was the heart of the French monarchy, and it was where Marie-Therese grew up. Marie-Therese was especially close with her mother, Marie Antoinette. Despite the reputation that Marie Antoinette has obtained of being really out of touch, she was a very affectionate and caring, devoted mother. Marie-Therese had 3 siblings, Louis Charles, Louis Joseph, and Princess Sophie, as well as 3 other adopted children that Marie Antoinette and Louis had adopted together. She was educated thoroughly in etiquette, history, and religion. She grew up closely to the friends of the Queen, including the Duchess de Polignac and the Princess de Lamballe. Throughout Marie-Therese's childhood, Marie Antoinette really wanted to emphasize to her daughter the value of the privilege that they actually had, and she did this in a number of ways. Marie Antoinette would invite less fortunate children to play with Marie-Therese and to have meals with Marie-Therese and the royal family. Furthermore, Marie Antoinette held lessons for Marie-Therese in the real world. For example, in 1784 there were bread shortages in France, and Marie Antoinette did not buy any New Year's gifts for her children or for herself, explaining to her kids that the money that she had set aside for this went all to her charities and to the people of France. Quote from Marie Antoinette excerpts as, "I should have liked to give you these as New Year's gifts, but there is a crowd of unhappy people who do not have wood to set their fires, nor bread to eat." Marie-Therese's mother, Marie Antoinette, had reciprocal affection for her daughter, and in a letter that Marie Antoinette wrote to Marie-Therese, her mother, the Austrian Empress, reads as follows: "I have a little girl who is as lively as she is good. She is a great comfort to me. She will be an excellent queen one day, I'm sure of it." Marie Antoinette wrote this letter in 1780. However, Marie-Therese's life would soon be marked by tragedy. France, economically, politically, and socially, was very unstable in these years. Following both the Enlightenment and the American War of Independence, ideals of liberty have been spread throughout the country. Economically, the country had spent massive amounts of money through the building of Versailles, which cost $2 billion, and the 7 Years' War, as well as the American War of Independence, which cost $1 billion. Combined with factors such as poor harvests, the people of France were finding it difficult to be able to afford the cost of living, with bread prices rising rapidly. This led to the beginning of the 1789 French Revolution. This saw the storming of the Bastille on the 14th of July, 1789, which saw the first decapitation in the French Revolution of the Governor de Logny. 2 days after this, Marie-Therese's father, Louis XVI, met the demands of the National Assembly to try and ease things over with this beginning of the revolution. However, as we know, the revolution continued, and on the 5th of October, a group of around 8,000 women storm Versailles, in which Marie Antoinette is in Versailles with her children. There are people in the crowd who are yelling "Death to the Austrian," referring to Marie Antoinette. So I can't even begin to imagine what Marie-Therese would have been thinking with people wanting her mother to be dead. Eventually, Marie Antoinette enters the balcony and she bows her head to the people who have stormed the Versailles Palace. From this point onward, Marie-Therese and her family can no longer live in Versailles, and they move to the Tuileries. Marie-Therese and the royal family were very religious, as was most of the France at the time. So, when the oath of the civil constitution of the clergy emerged, it met a lot of discomfort from the royal family, including Marie-Therese. This discomfort was met by her father as well, who agreed that they were going to try and flee France. So they had set off on what is known now as the flight to Varennes. However, the royal family got caught in the midst of their attempted escape. So Marie-Therese and her family have to return to France now, and the French people are not happy because it looks like their king was trying to abandon them. Not long after, the Tuileries Palace is stormed and Louis is no longer the King of France. Marie-Therese's close friend, a friend of her mother, Marie Antoinette, the Princess de Lamballe, is massacred in the September massacres of 1792. This time must have been extremely traumatic for Marie-Therese. Shortly after, her father, Louis XVI, the former king, is put on trial and is executed on the 21st of January 1793. On the 3rd of July, Marie-Therese is separated from her mother, Marie Antoinette. Antoinette fought off the guards for an hour, shouting, "No, no, take my children away, that is not possible." She held her son Louis Charles in her arms and cried for an hour. Marie-Therese later wrote about the event, stating, "At last they threatened my mother so positively to kill him," referring to her brother, "and us also, that she had to yield her love for us. My poor mother no longer had any strength." Bathing him with tears and forbidding that she would never see him again, the poor little boy kissed us all very tenderly and went away in tears. This is referring to the direct separation of Marie Antoinette from her son, who was pried from her arms. Following on the 16th of October 1793, Marie-Therese's mother, Marie Antoinette, is put on trial on the 14th of October 1793 and then executed on the 16th of October 1793. Therese was not initially told about her mother's execution and only found out 2 years later. Here is an excerpt from an etching on Marie-Therese's prison walls. "Marie-Therese is the saddest person in the world. She can obtain no news of her mother nor be reunited to her, although she has asked for it 1,000 times. Long live my good mother, whom I can hear no tidings, but keep close to my heart." Marie-Therese was absolutely distraught upon hearing about her mother's execution and was extremely upset. However, she claimed that she would never cry as she did not want to give her jailers the barbaric pleasure of seeing her cry. The next year, her aunt, Madame Elizabeth, is executed, and the following year, her brother dies of tuberculosis and abuse in 1795. Marie-Therese was the only sole survivor of her entire family to survive the revolution. She was isolated in the Temple Tower and was subject to emotional abuse. In her memoirs, she later wrote, "I was in the deepest grief. I had lost everything I loved in the world. I was alone in a prison." In 1795, following international pressure, Marie-Therese was used almost as a trading pawn with the Austrians from her mother's side to be traded with some prisoners for her release. So she went to live with her Austrian relatives from her mother Marie Antoinette's side. And in 1799, she married her cousin, the Duke of Angoulême. Marie-Therese was pretty happy with this union, as her parents had already talked about this union happening in the future, so Marie-Therese was happy to go ahead with it. But Marie-Therese suffered a miscarriage in the early years of her marriage in 1813. It was the only time she would be pregnant, and she would not have any surviving children. However, you may see some misinformation that Marie-Therese gave birth to a child while she was imprisoned. However, there is no concrete evidence to support that statement. In 1814, Napoleon abdicates the throne and the Bourbon monarchy is restored, with Louis XVI's brother, Marie-Therese's uncle, taking the throne as Louis XVIII. Marie-Therese at this point returns to France. However, she was said to have had difficulty trusting French people, which was fair enough given all the trauma that she had went through in the French Revolution. Her return to France, as well as her marriage within a royal family, helped to maintain the legitimacy of the reclaimant of the Bourbon line. As Marie-Therese was the only surviving child of the former King and Queen of France, so she was the last line in the direct Bourbon descendants. Napoleon actually named Marie-Therese as the only man in the family. Her existence as the daughter of the executed King of France was a constant reminder of the monarchy's claim to power. Her presence was symbolic of royal suffering and martyrdom, and by some, she was named as the daughter of the martyrs. And Marie-Therese wrote, "I returned to a country where I lost everything I held dear. I will still serve it, if I can, with the shadow of my strength that my parents had." Her uncle Louis XVII reigned as king until 1824 upon her death, when Marie-Therese actually obtained the title of the Dauphine of France, which her mother had previously held from 1770 to 1774. I can't even begin to imagine what Marie-Therese would have been thinking. She was now the Dauphine of France, and the former Dauphine of France, her mother, had been executed in the French Revolution. Her husband is now the king, and she is the queen consort of France, which is quite ironic as she was the daughter of the previous king, but again, women couldn't inherit the throne. I can't even begin to imagine what Marie-Therese would have been thinking at this time, but she didn't have long to think because after 20 minutes, her husband abdicates the throne. After the abdication, Marie-Therese again went into exile, this time permanently. She lived in England and Austria with the remaining Bourbon family. She continued to play a ceremonial role in royalist circles and remained loyal to the Bourbon cause, though she avoided overt political involvement. The last French Revolution that Marie-Therese lived through was the 1848 Revolution, in which the monarchy collapsed, and shortly after, the Bonapartists took the throne and France became an empire again in 1851. Throughout her later life, she maintained strict religious devotion and commemorated her lost family. She avoided speaking of her traumatic past in public, but kept a private devoted record. Her writings reflect her sorrow, claiming, "I forgive all those who made me suffer. I place all in God's hands." Marie-Therese died on the 19th of October 1851. She died three days following the 58-year anniversary of her mother's execution and death. Ironically, she died where her mother was born, Austria. Her last words were recorded as, "I am alienated." Marie-Therese lived through a lot. She lived through the end of absolutist France, then she lived through the First Napoleonist Empire, then she lived through a constitutional monarchist France, and then the return of the Bonapartist Empire just before her death. She lived through so much social unrest and upheaval, and I find her life extremely fascinating. I really hope you enjoyed this video and learning about Marie-Therese, and I'm excited to bring more history content your way. Bye everyone!